All right, let's just break away and see what happens. All right, we're following that closely, also following the president saying the Democrats are getting very strange when they're pushing some things that seem to be odd at this time, including abolishing the Electoral College, maybe packing the Supreme Court with more members than just the 9 we already have, bringing the voting age down to 16. To the Washington Examiner's Byron York, Democratic strategist Kristen Hawn, National Taxpayers Union senior fellow Maddie Depler. Maddie, the president is saying they can't win at the ballot box, so they're trying to push their issues now to get their way regardless. On the Electoral College thing, a good example of that, Democrats will counter, well, we did win at the ballot box on the popular vote. The president saying the fact of the matter is they didn't recount at the Electoral College, so now they want to get rid of the Electoral College. What do you think?
Well, I think that this has been the Democratic playbook for as long as I can remember. The notion that there are narrow slices of the population that they can appeal to has been what Democrats have tried to really mount their campaigns on. And Republicans, for a long time, have been kind of the green eye shade wearers, telling people about the economy, bringing out the charts. It's why Republicans, for so long, were not successful in some of their big electoral battles. And then Donald Trump came along, right? And he was a storyteller. He was someone who went into communities that had not been competitive for Republicans in the past and said, listen, I hear you, I feel you, I understand what you're going through. He made an economic argument, but he did so in a way that was really telling a story and that was empathizing with communities who felt like they've been left behind from Washington. I think that's what Democrats need to understand and appreciate going into 2020. Having these narrow political opinions that certainly aren't going to be vote-moving issues for large blocks of the Progressive Party, I don't think is a winning strategy for Democrats moving into 2020.
You know, Kristen, on this, bring the voting age down to 16, I can't even get my teenager to take out the garbage. So I'm thinking to myself, maybe you're not quite ready for that powerful a right. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I may agree with you there, and I'll just go back and say that, you know, the president to call what the Democrats are talking about strange is pretty rich. I mean, he spent the weekend talking about asking the FCC to investigate SNL for colluding with Russia. So there's that.
But think SNL has colluded with Russia?
I don't think so. Okay. I don't think. But I do think that, you know, if we are going to win, we did win at the ballot box in November, and it's because we talked about things like preserving the right things about the ACA and making it better and bringing jobs back to the United States.
In the way? It just seems that Democrats are. It just looks flaky. You know?
I mean, I think that I think Pete Buttigieg had a good idea about the Supreme Court. So there are things you can talk about. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. And if Democrats continue to go along this, Medicare for all, I mean, these are not things we ran on and we won on in the midterms. So we need to take a step back and, talk to people, talk to the American people about what really matters to them. It's their health care and it's their jobs.
Those are important issues. None of this other stuff, at least, Byron, to me, appears to be. And on the whole electoral vote thing, it would be an uphill climb, to put it mildly. But obviously, we would campaign very differently if it was based on the popular vote. And I always think it does a disservice to whoever gets the shorter end of the stick on the popular vote versus the electoral vote, because obviously, in such an environment, the Republican would campaign in strongholds for Republicans, Texas, other, rural areas. The Democrats would try to run up the votes in places like California, New York. So the whole campaign would be run differently, wouldn't it?
Completely differently. Now, when Democrats talk about getting rid of the Electoral College, they don't really believe they can amend the Constitution. Actually, they want to embrace a plan that some states have already embraced, which is it takes 270 electoral votes to win the White House. And the idea would be if enough states got together who had a total of 270 votes between them and they all agreed to cast their electors to the winner of the popular vote, then that would be an end run around the Constitution. And that actually has the support of a number of Democrats, and states with a total of 181 electoral votes have already done that.
It could be very interesting in 2020 if that comes to pass.
And it would change things not only, as you said, which is that Democrats would look to run up the score in California and New York. Republicans would try to run up the score in Texas and other red states. It would also mean a difference probably in the number of candidates. The Electoral College requires a majority of electors to become president. A popular vote would just mean more votes than the other guy. There could be 3, 4, 5 candidates. Right. Somebody could win the presidency with 28% of the vote. It's not out of the question if you tear up our constitutional order.
We started out here, Maddie, talking about more substantive things, and I think Kristen alluded to them. Democrats were very successful pounding health care in the midterms. That was a substantive issue for which Republicans were caught off guard, and they lost 40 seats in the House as a result. So I'm wondering if they should get back to the basics and focus on that, not talk about packing the Supreme Court or getting rid of the Electoral College. That might be a long-term issue both parties could address if you find it archaic or what have you. But they're not doing that. Now, maybe that'll change as the election season heats up, but what do you think?
Well, I think that Democrats need those voters who voted for Donald Trump in the Midwest to come out for them in 2020. And that means appealing to them on issues that they care about and that they're talking about around their kitchen table. Health care is certainly one of them. But as you mentioned, the House races were very successful for Democrats in 2018, but not in the Senate. And when you're running for president, you have to run statewide just like you do in those Senate races. So you really need a message that translates to a broader population. I think that Democrats are really struggling to find that. Health care is a good example. Fixing the ACA is very different than trying to implement Medicare for all, and you've already seen a lot of divisions between the Democratic primary candidates about what is the right choice for health care policy moving forward.
Kristen, real fast, do you think the party nominates a moderate or some of these extreme liberals?
I think that we'll ultimately, I don't know about a moderate, but we'll ultimately nominate somebody like a Joe Biden, even a Pete Buttigieg, people who are listening, who aren't, people that aren't just running far straight to the left. I think anybody who does that can kiss the nomination goodbye.
Byron, that's the consensus. It's always dangerous that if they go far left, their chances of winning are far out.
I think there's going to be a huge generational reckoning inside the Democratic Party. Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders would be 78 and 79 years old, respectively, on Inauguration Day in 2021. That's too old. And I think that there is a whole group of younger candidates in their 40s and 50s in that sweet spot to be elected president. And the choice is going to come down to them. And some of them, by the way, are pretty far to the left.
Be careful about the age thing there, Byron. 78 is the new 77.
Yeah, there you go. That is older than Ronald Reagan was when he left the White House after 8 years in office.
All right, fine, but times have changed. So just going to hear from the older crowd who are not going to like what you just said. All right, we have a lot more coming up.